Hello, everybody. It is with great joy that I am back in this chapel today to introduce today's speaker, my father, Clayton Platt. I am part of the class of 2010 because when I was 11, my dad made quite the bold decision. He decided to leave a successful career in finance and move his family from Connecticut to Pennsylvania so he could take on the role of a director of alumni here at the Episcopal Academy. I know he did this in part because he so loved his time here that he wanted his children to also have that opportunity and that experience. I also think he did this because he was open to reevaluating his beliefs about what he wanted out of a career and ultimately what he wanted out of life. While I did not necessarily appreciate it then, I know I made his life miserable for a whole summer because he was moving me away from my friends. I am awed and inspired by this introspection and self-interrogation. It is one of the many reasons that I continue to look up to him and why I'm incredibly excited for him to speak to you all today. And so without further ado, Clayton Platt.
Thank you. Thanks, Taylor, so much. I appreciate the invitation from Father Gavin and the vestry to speak, and I'm very, very, very honored. One of Mahatma Gandhi's most famous quotes was, "Your beliefs become your thoughts become your words become your actions become your habits become your values, and your values become your destiny." As Gandhi suggested, our beliefs' power to impact the direction of our lives is enormous. So we all know the expression, the courage of your convictions, right? Well, I'm going to urge us to be bold enough to look at our belief system from several angles, taking the opportunity to potentially challenge our convictions and, where appropriate, perhaps admit we've been wrong. Or to conclude that what led us to think and act in a certain way was indeed accurate, fully justified, and then we can move forward with renewed passion and commitment. A very hard thing for most people, myself included, is to realize when we've made a mistake or when we need to change course or modify a long-held belief. But as difficult and as painful as that process is, we have to do it. If you're completely honest with yourself, think about this. When was the last time you seriously had a change of mind about something that really, truly mattered? The reason that admitting we are wrong is hard is because we as responsible adults or soon-to-be adults, it makes us feel weak. It makes us feel like we're less competent in some way. But if we truly allow ourselves to grow and shed those preconceptions, and we pause and we consider the alternatives, this doesn't mean that we necessarily have to change our minds, but rather that we remain willing to change our minds in the face of new information. Organizational psychologist and top-rated Wharton Business School professor Adam Grant wrote a book called Think Again: The Power of Knowing What You Don't Know. And in it, he quotes Danny Kahneman, Princeton professor and winner of the 2002 Nobel Prize in Economics, as saying this: "Being wrong is the only way I feel sure I've learned anything." Grant makes another point that I think is very interesting in the book, and it's how we pride ourselves on being gritty and resilient. Now, these, I admit, I think are very, very important qualities. But an obsession with continuing on a dangerous path, despite the warning signs that this in fact may be representing poor judgment, can be very risky. On a personal level, and this is not very grand in the grand scheme of things. A few months ago, I was in a double squash match, and I managed to pull my hamstring in the third point of the first game. And I decided to keep playing, and with the help of my speedy, competent wife, my partner, we won. What was my prize? An incredibly painful leg that I could hardly walk on for about a month. Not so smart. The top of Mount Everest is littered with the bodies of some of the bravest, grittiest mountain climbers known to mankind who made a bad choice. Grant calls this pattern the escalation of commitment and says when we dedicate ourselves to a plan that isn't going as hoped, our first instinct is usually not to rethink it. Instead, we tend to double down and sink more resources into the plan. Okay. Now, I am not doubting that grit and resilience are important. They are incredibly important. They can get you through some very tough times. But blindly staying the course might also be problematic. Now, I imagine that seniors, some of you next year are going to be going into pre-med, engineering. You're going to perhaps play sports at a next level. And along the line, sometime you're going to have some doubts. I would be surprised if you didn't. Here's where testing the beliefs are fundamental to making those decisions essential. Whose needs are being met by those beliefs and those commitments, and what might you know now that you weren't aware of before? Now, it's possible, even probable, that you're going to have your original assumptions confirmed. And if that's the case, awesome. You're going to feel much more inclined to put in that ultimate effort needed to push ahead and to recommit the path you started with renewed vigor. But you might also realize your priorities have changed, or that you have a clearer understanding of what's truly important at this point than you did before. Can you be brave enough to say, I might have been wrong, or I see things differently now? This sort of reflection takes guts, but the end game, your destiny, as Gandhi put it, is so worth it. Thinking again, testing our beliefs, and challenging our assumptions is very useful on an institutional level. Where would EA be if in the 1915, 1960 years, the trustees hadn't decided to change the belief that it had to stay on Locust Street in Center City, instead moved to what was then farmland in Overbrook? And how about the decision to go co-ed after the school had been single-sex for almost 200 years? The trustees in the early 70s began to ask themselves, what's changed? What do we know today that wasn't widely known in the EA's earlier days? Because of the way our brains are wired, our tendency is to come to conclusions somewhat rapidly, and it's all based on our experience. Our brain defaults on what it already knows, and it uses those data points to decide how to react in a situation, deciding what to believe. So here's the takeaway. Unless we slow this process down and we take the proverbial pause and then intentionally read between the lines, we're going to base our judgments on a pool of information that may be, well, incomplete or fatally flawed. As Taylor said, almost 20 years ago, I made the decision to move down from Connecticut to leave finance and become the alumni director. Dream job. Loved it. Building the passion for an alumni base to move from Marion to Newtown Square. 3.5 years into that, the powers that be came to me and said, Clayton, you've done a good job. Things have changed. What you were in this job is no longer needed going forward. Great decision for the school. They made the right decision. The school has prospered, and I have prospered. I love where I am now. The ability to look at that and say things have changed and change direction and embrace it is beautiful. I thank you so much. I'm going to say this. Jeff Bezos said, if you don't change your mind frequently, you're going to be wrong a lot. Thank you so much for this opportunity. God bless the class of 1973, and God bless EA. Thank you.